Activating meridians. Alignment. Instability in field. Negative. Charged aligning matrix field. Positive. Coordinates reached, Commander.
Activate the Sade field.
Activations of multidimensional engines.
Launch communications probe.
Power levels to maximum.
Activate all dimensional levels of communication.
Communication established.
The voice you hear is known as Bob. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our destination. This is the last slave planet in the galaxy. Under all agreements, under all rights, under galactic law, we now proclaim this planet free. The descension of the true human consciousness has begun.
Energizing Shambhala diamonds.
The men, women, and children of this planet are now set free.
Grid fields activated.
You have already reached
Activate Shambhala diamond.
critical mass.
Integration onto microcosm. Expanding linear space.
Prepare for landing.
Free space activation. Landing. Caution. All crew members to station. This is the Starship Bob. We are landing.
Just let me make sure I've got all this right. We're going to have a cracking show, I feel, for you coming up in the next hour or so. Dark City special. We've got Miles Swagger. Am I getting that right, Miles? No, I've not. See, look, you've got me got it, lads, already. We've got James Swagger. Am I getting that right?
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting James Swagger, hosted by Bob's Backyard and Miles Chris, dumbass from Divergent History.
And as you can tell, we've got Miles with us this evening. James is quite new. Well, he's brand new to Dark City Radio. Of course, he's not new on Earth. He's been kicking around a while. And James is an author. He's written a couple of books about a topic that I know a lot of us are going to be kind of buzzed up about. Megaliths, ancient monuments, and as I've just found out in our 5 minutes we have between the shows, starting from zero backwards, anything pre-Roman. So, James, would you like to say hello to us, our listeners at Dark City Radio? And once again, welcome.
Hi, Bob, and hi, Miles. Great to be on the show and listen, and to all the listeners.
So yeah, we don't get a lot of response from our listeners immediately because we've got a few in the room with us this evening. But yes, they are out there. They are beginning to come onto the server, which is good. Hello, listeners. Like to mention the listeners.
That's always good to mention the listeners. Always good to listen. It
is good to mention the listeners because at the end of the day, we're a lot of guys in a VoIP over IP room having a chat. That's what we actually are. And so without the listeners, we're not a radio station. So yeah, James, you've written a couple of books. Can we start before we get to your books, James, on how you actually got into where you're at now, the monuments, the ancient monuments, and what seems to be.
Sure. It's not a simple answer. I'd like to try and give a simple answer sometimes, but you usually get the Bob Geldof answer, as I say. But I've always been into ancient cultures since I remember having my intellect captivated at the age of 10, reading about the lost city of Machu Picchu, and I remember reading it in an encyclopedia, kids' encyclopedia, and ever since then, on the ancient Egyptians, I'd read about them, and I just couldn't get my head around why these places were lost, and so that appealed to me, and it always did. And my father always inherently just stuck books in front of me all the time, unexplained mystery stuff like that, But for most of my youth, and I was into ham radio and all sorts of electrical and electronics and stuff. My dad's quite a smart guy with mechanical engineering. And can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can, man.
Sorry,
I can hear you.
Sorry, just breaking up there. Okay, so yeah, and I've always had a good engineering background because my dad's a great teacher, and I've got great education in the home. But I went into engineering as a career because first and foremost, that's what I'm good at. That's what I am put on this earth for in terms of career. It's my best ability, It's not my most passionate ability, and I've also gone in and done a physics with astronomy degree. Academically, I've never used it. I've a mechanical engineering degree, and I've also got a Master's of Research, Science and Society. I spent 10 years at university, on and off, over a 12-year period, So this is what I did for a career, and most of it, I worked as a systems analyst in the energy industry, wind farms, oil rigs, predominantly oil rigs, oil, petrochem, water industry, heavily industrially automated places. I mean, you're talking electrical cabinets, that would take you 15, 20 minutes to walk the length of, just insane industrial complexes, the most automated places in Britain and Ireland. And when these things broke down, that's what was my job to fix it. I was the systems analyst. I was there to make sure everything ran smoothly, and if it could run better, I was there to redesign it as well. So that's what a systems analyst does, and the systems analyst can work for many types of different systems, but mine was predominantly heavy industrial engineering based. Now, what's that got to do with megaliths? Well, I always wanted to change a career, and I wrote for a historical histories magazine. And when I was younger, I actually always wanted to be a writer, even at the age of 20. And I've always been reading alternative history most of my young career, from 14 to 20. I was absorbing alternative history, and if I hadn't had my way then, I'd have been a writer. But I hadn't the skills to be a writer. I hadn't even a notion what I wanted to write about. I just knew I wanted to be a writer. But I went, well, forget about that because you don't have the skills, and I just dismissed it. But I ended up having the option to write for Historical Histories magazine in my late 20s, and it was mostly articles that were engineering based. So I would have looked at things like the Baghdad Battery, and it would have been ancient cosmology and the Nebra Sky Disk and all sorts of stuff for this Historical Mysteries magazine. Anything that was sciencey or engineering based, this is what I kind of looked at and wrote articles for, or and that doesn't run anymore. It was an Irish magazine, and it was short-lived. But it whetted my appetite, and it gave me a kind of little route into it. And I thought I would write a little encyclopedia of the mysteries, and I didn't even know what I just thought I'd compile the articles. I didn't even know where I was going with it. And so I started to write some of that, and I looked into ancient cartography, and I spoke to Miles before the show there. We were getting a little bit heated, but I think that's a good thing, though. That's a good thing. So ancient cartography I looked at, and there's some weird, strange maps out there. And some of them are anomalous, definitely, and that piqued my interest. And I also looked at ancient cultures and their astronomical alignments, archaeoastronomy. And then I also looked at ancient acoustics at monuments and stuff like that. So the subject of archaeoacoustics is pretty dear to me as well. And so I started to look and try and group some of these mysteries together and subjects. And I studied the origins of metallurgy, the origins of wheat, the origins of civilization. And I was starting to get genres together. And I came to the megalithic civilization, and naively, I thought I would put one chapter together on it, and I ended up. By the time I came to write that chapter, I had this little article fall out of a book, and it landed on my lap, quite randomly and chaotically. It was from a book that I bought in America. It was a first edition. I couldn't get any other copy, and inside it was an article, and I showed an ancient monument that was literally forgotten about, and it wasn't too far from me. It was actually quite close to me in the north of Ireland. So off I went to see it, and I found rock art there, and I went, oh, right, that's nice. Went home to search it, and couldn't find anything on it. I found one article And that was it. And it was incorrect. It was blatantly wrong. And that was it's in my book, the first book, the Newgrange Sirius Mystery, and it's called the Ardmore Equinox Stone, that I call it.
Was that article, did that happen to be from Ancient American Magazine?
It's either that or Scientific American Magazine, I can't remember. It was actually dated 1976, this article. It was a July issue, 1976. That's how far back it was going. But yeah, the book was called Hamlet's Mill by Hirschi von Decken and Giorgio Santillano, and it was 1950s first edition, I think, if I remember correctly. I hope I've got their names right. But yes, so it goes into astronomical themes at ancient places and stuff. So it had this megalithic observatories article in it. I'll look that up for you, though, Miles. And
well, I was also thinking it might be Serpent in the Sky from John Anthony West.
No,
that came out, I think, in 79. But you said an article, so no. Yeah.
No, I've actually had John Anthony West on my own podcast, Capricorn Radio, to talk about Serpent in the Sky. Fascinating guy, John Anthony West. I really adore his work. He's fascinating.
Me too.
Guy. But so I mean, there I was looking at this piece of rock art that was incorrectly deciphered, if you want to call it that. But I think it was, dressed up and made into something else. I wouldn't even say it was deciphered, because if you can't decipher something that's incorrect, so that's not even the right terminology to use. So it was erroneously deciphered, if you want to call it that. But anyway, there I was. I thought it would fix the problem. I looked at it, and to me it was as obvious as I didn't even need deciphering. It was obvious as the light of day that you have these two constellations, and I show the image in the book. It's the Ursa Major and the Ursa Minor. And what's so important about this is, at 3000 BC, when this standing stone with the rock art on it, the Ursa Major and Ursa Minor constellations flip, and they do so only at this latitude, at this particular moment in time when the stone was erected, every 6 months. But it does it on the 21st of March and the 21st of September. And it's aligned to this image in the sky. And there's a special notch on the stone as well to even signify this event. In other words, look up at this notch, look at this V-shaped line going down the center of the stone, this equator on the stone, the stone's equator, if you want to call it that. And so I just thought this was crazy that this place is forgotten about. It's actually quite close to a modern city, 10 miles away. So it's near civilization, but it's not on the map. There's GPS coordinates of it online on a random site. It's hard to get to. It's not signposted. Even with GPS coordinates, I couldn't find it. It was difficult. I was still rambling around because the GPS weren't accurate. But so I thought, well, what else is forgotten about? What else is... So I just jumped into the megalithic civilization, and I took a systems and analyst approach to it. I just applied my career, my skills, and the thing is, I see complexity very, very easy, and I don't see simple things very easy. I have that innate ability in me, and some people see it as a gift. I see it as a disability, but I take very, very complex problems, and the megalithic civilization, for want of a better term, is a complex problem. I mean, it scatters over so many countries, from Britain, Ireland, north, south, east and west of Britain and Ireland. You're looking at it in southern Sweden. You're looking at Denmark, Holland, the north coast of Germany, Brittany, France, Portugal, and as far as Malta, and the islands of Minorca as well. So this is quite a vast terrain. They're all building with large stones. Dolmens are quite a common feature, but also they had passage graves, they had long barrows, they had standing stones. They were always incorporating astronomy and solstices. So there I found myself trying to compile this, and I just got pulled in deeper and deeper, and then I found some other rock art in Doth, and I addressed that as the Pleiades constellation, and I developed what I call a passage grave cosmology, because in Ireland we have a very popular type of monument called the passage grave, and the most famous one is probably Newgrange. Although equally in Brittany there's one called Gavrinis, and it's equally as famous. It's the most decorated passage grave we have, and that's why it's probably as famous. But so I mean, we have there's ones in Wales as well, Bryn Celli Dhu, I think it's called, and the way I pronounce it anyway. And it's got pretty closely associated rock art with the ones in Ireland. So you have bits of rock art here and there, and you have this mystery civilization that was using beautiful artistic forms to express even my sequel book, Altered States of Consciousness, as well as the astronomy, but concentrating on astronomy for what we're talking about today in the Newgrange Sirius Mystery, my book, I addressed this passage grave cosmology, and I compiled what I call a passage grave cosmology because they effectively had some sort of a cosmology. Now, is that cosmology what we have today? I'm not so sure. Like, they had an observational cosmology. Similar to what the Mayans did. Like, they observed long periods of stars, they aligned standing rows, and when they were knocked out of alignment, they knew that there was something else affecting that, and I effectively believe that they tried to measure crudely, albeit crudely, the precession of the equinox, and that's essentially the crux of my book, is that the Newgrange Sirius Mystery, that they used Sirius and Newgrange as a crude precessional calculator. Because Newgrange is famous for its solstice monument. So, I got suckered into this very complex problem. I mostly concentrated on Ireland. I will say that for a very good reason, because at Newgrange, it's got 45% of the rock art of Europe sitting in that one site alone. Between Newgrange and Notes, 45% of the rock art of Europe sits in that one locale. It's totally insane, and people don't even grasp what that means, like. You go, well, if 45% of a small number is not, but there's a lot of rock art in Europe. You got to understand that, So to have 45% there in one site, there's so much there. So everybody tries to go to Newgrange to crack the megaliths, to crack this civilization. Like, it's like a mecca. Like, that's the starting point. Well, I didn't. I started up in the north of Ireland, and I addressed this one type of monument. So I've been to over 300 plus passage graves now, ranging. My mum's Danish, so I've been to the ones in Denmark, and they lack rock art, but I still went there. And I've been to the ones in Holland, the Drenthe region. There's 54 there, or 55, I think. I've been as far as the Algarve in Portugal to look up the links between there and the ones in Scotland, because they're quite similarly linked with ones in Scotland for a variety of reasons, and mostly art. And again, Brittany, and I've been in Brittany on a few occasions to look at, because they're like a megalithic theme park over there. They're a megalithic hotspot. So yeah, I mean, my outlook and my systems analyst approach was look at the whole megalithic civilization as a whole. I concentrated on one aspect, which was the passage grave, and I tried to compile what their cosmology was, and effectively what they were trying to achieve.
James, just a quick one from our IRC chat room. Whereabouts in Denmark? You've got them, the chat in here, you see. They're saying they've seen the ones in Ireland. They've actually seen the ones in Ireland.
I'm actually in the process of compiling I have them all on GPS coordinates, and I have them they're scattered everywhere. They're not actually that far outside Copenhagen, but they're very little well known. You can, I could probably try and look it up in the next few minutes and send you the link, Bob.
Did you find these yourself?
No, I didn't find them.
Around?
Sorry, no. You got to understand. There's one called Nud Forest. If you Google Nud Forest Passage Grave, N-U-K-N-U-D, as in Nud, K-N-U-D Forest Passage Grave, you'll get to the Danish site, and it'll show you. Now, sorry, Miles, I haven't discovered these in at all. No, the Danish Monument Service do a really good job of preserving these. They actually have made them all structurally sound. I mean, the ones that are in Holland are pretty much all that remains is the passageway, like, all this rest of the mound is gone, like, and so, the ones in Denmark still have the mound over a lot of them. So yeah, I mean, no, the ones in Denmark are interesting in that the mounds are still there, but yeah, I mean, it's disappointing that there's not any rock art there to indicate. So.
Right, so yeah, they'll dig them out, man. It's Norman and Dozy from our chat room.
Sure, I should just say I'm actually in the process. I have my website for the book, newgrangecosmology.com, and you can get there anyway from my author's page, jamesswagger.com. But on my newgrangecosmology.com site, I am compiling Google satellite images of all the passage graves in Ireland that are worth seeing. I'm not doing everyone. I'm not doing the ones that are pretty much decimated archaeological sites that don't look like much other than a pile of stones in the ground. But I have been to 75 of the 100 plus passage graves in Ireland, which are in various states of decay. I have started doing that, compiling that, and it's a bit of a long-term project. It's quite laborious. But I do also have quite a lot of data on the Danish ones, and I will be compiling them on the website and doing the satellite Google images of them as well. But if you want to go to the Facebook page, you'll see the pictures of them all. So you can go to the Newgrange Serious Mystery on Facebook, and you can look up all the photos of all the passage graves I've been to, and there's a phenomenal amount there. There's 1,000 pictures on there at least, and you'll see all the pictures and all the names of the Danish ones. That would probably be the best and quickest way to find the names of all these passage graves. But they got weird names. They're like Oyster Hive. I can't even pronounce them. They got strange spellings. And I spell it with the English O and E instead of the Danish joint combined letters. But Dalby Royev is another one. But yeah, I mean, go to the Newgrange Serious Mystery on Facebook, or follow the links on newgrangecosmology.com. And once you're on the Facebook page for the book, you'll find all the pictures there. There's such a wealth of information there.
And if I'm right, you're going to give our listeners some more opportunities in the future, James, to verify and ask you more questions and
sure.
stuff. So yeah, don't worry too much. James will be here with us on Dark City for a while. So we've got another question which came in, James, and I've got a few things to put to you, but I'm quite happy for you to to speak on whatever comes to your mind, man.
Sure. It's good to give the information out too, Bob. Of where
I totally agree with you.
Where your sources are.
Yeah, totally agree with you, man. Totally agree with you. One thing that has come in.
I should just say, Bob. When you go to the Danish Museum in Copenhagen and you walk in the door, they're quite proud with their link with Ireland, and they have a picture of Newgrange up there showing that, they don't have the rock art for all these passage graves, but they're very proud to link it up with Newgrange. But when you go to Malta, these are Maltese monuments. Don't dare associate these with Ireland, The shame about that is, they really think that the Maltese monuments are a local innovation. That maybe people from Sicily came over, and that's all there is to see, nothing else to see here, and so many people are going, well, look, you got the spiral, we have that as well, and you got the sun wheel, and we've got that as well, and you got the solstice, we got that as well, and you got the same ceremonial bowls, and we got that as well. So they put a picture of Newgrange up to stop people asking questions, and some stupid piece of text that doesn't even mean anything. And I asked the guy about, why do you think that they're a local innovation? And he goes, well, we think this because the pottery we found. I went, yeah, no, I know it's in the guidebook, I said, but, there's so many more links to, Ireland and all the rest of it. And clearly, the red ochre that is used at these monuments has no source anywhere on Malta or Sicily, and you know that for a fact, and archaeology knows that for a fact in Malta, but you still insist, and he wouldn't take me on. He just ignored me, just looked to the ground and ignored me in shame. But
have you been to the island of Gozo?
I was telling somebody about this the other day. I actually had a Maltese girl visit me. I think you call them Maltese. Maltese girl. She was visiting me and staying with me because I was near a concert venue, and it was a friend of a friend. But I was telling her about my trip to Gozo. I went to the Gigantea temple for half an hour or an hour, whatever I spent there, and just went home. That's why I went to Malta. To the island. I just made the north trek up to the north island of Gozo, and I didn't go to anything else on Gozo. And people think I'm mad because Gozo's like a paradise. It's got lovely beaches and lagoons, and it's gorgeous. I went, no, I was there to see the temple. I was there for business. But I'm pretty obsessed sometimes with the places I go to. So she thought that was insane that I didn't see anything other than the Gigantea temple. But it is the oldest freestanding structure in the world. If you accept that. Göbekli Tepe maybe overrules that.
Yeah, I visited it myself. That's why I asked, and I actually found when I spoke to the local people, and I don't mean the Orthodox Catholic people who were there, but the local people who are a little bit tuned in. I did spend a considerable amount of time there. I tend to be able to. When I go to a place, I tend to find out more of the people than who are there now, and how they relate to these monuments. I met up with a few people while I was there. I think I had about 3 months there.
Nice.
So I got to know the island pretty well. And I found...
Beautiful place, by the way, Bob. Beautiful place.
I'd say it's quite demonic, actually. The actual place itself is beautiful.
No, the scenery, like, I mean...
Oh, yeah, the actual... But,
yeah,
how it's run, I would say it's...
Oh, how it's run? No,
next to the Vatican. Next to the Vatican, I'd say.
They got a Templar history there as well, haven't they?
The Knights of Malta. It's not a history. It's alive, and it's
still alive. Well, it's alive and kicking.
Yeah.
Still, like,
and it's been happening for a long time, I suppose. But I found that the people were quite warm to the idea that they would have been trade with the Danes, at least. I haven't actually been to Copenhagen, but I've spent quite a considerable amount of time in Denmark, and I've got to agree with you. Even the language that's used, certain words. Between the Celtic tribes, there must have been at least trade as a minimum. These people weren't ignorant savages drinking seawater and chewing on tree bark, and dying at the age of 21. I mean,
I often hear purported that, like, on BBC in programs, propaganda programs, if you want to call it that. I don't think the BBC is that great sometimes. I think they roll out whatever history programs that suits them, like, and choose to do not do other ones, like, although they have a large funding and they do some good science programs, but they often, when they touch on the megalithic civilization, when they do get around to doing some of the programs on it, they always talk about them living near... there was one of them on Coast, I think it was, and he was at the passage grave of Gavrinis, and he was goofing off the one in Anglesey in Wales as well. And they talk about these guys living, near the coasts for the rich source of food that they were able to get off the sea. And I'm like, that's just not wrong. That's just not right, Bob. These guys were seafarers. These guys were able to traverse the seas between Britain and Ireland at will, easily. Yeah, these guys were seafaring. They were seafaring community. I think they came from the sea. I think they came from, like, the Celts in Ireland. They talk about this mythological race called the Tuatha De Danann, which I mentioned briefly at the end of the book, like, for a little speculation, but that they talk about this, the ones that they inherited the monuments of, these megalithic builders, that they came from the west, the western seas, like. But, they often never address this whole seafaring thing, like. But besides all that, like, these monuments are linked, obviously, through, like, from Malta to Scotland, from the British Isles right down to Portugal, and all along the west coast of, the Iberian Peninsula. And it's like, it's insane, like, that they had that much spectrum of coverage, like, but there's also problems too, like, the astronomy is the one thing that links it all up. They're all opening up to solstices. That's the key thing to know. Why that was, some people say ritualistic. I think there might have been calendar building. Be sure, one thing is, you get a lot of insight to what's going on with this culture in the Irish ones because of the rock art. The rock art is the key, Bob, to explain these monuments. But, like, in the Malta one, on the Malta situation, I'm talking about archaeology in Malta, particularly, not the people, like, they're like, but, like, they're a very, very proud people, the Maltese people. They're proud of their little island, like, you don't want to step on their toes, like,
Well, unfortunately, that's my natural talent. I seem to be able to turn up and get... They're all right. Like I say, they are people, but the majority of the people who are living there are living under sheer, I don't know what to call it, demonic possession. And that's what they're under. They live in tyranny and fear. It's ridiculous. It really is. Everybody knows everybody. They all know that it's controlled by controlled by what mafia. The mafia are doing it, and they all know. They all know, and they live in sheer terror of this. And my heart goes out to them. It really does. But there's no. Like I say, it's not a secret. It's not a secret there. These people know. You step out of the way and they'll turn up and shoot you in the face. And literally, this has happened on more than one occasion. So, it's a shame. It is a beautiful place. They say...
And another thing, Bob, there is also the fact that these ancient monuments are... Okay, Malta speaks English as well as these Maltese, whatever it is. It's a mixture of Arabic and stuff, but they do speak good English there. But you got the monuments in Algarve, and my Australian friend, that went with me there. We were laughing at them, the guy at the reception centre had no interest. He was sitting reading his book. We were annoying him because we came to visit one day. And it's I don't think many people go to the Alcalá Monument 7 and Monument 9 complex. And
no, they're all like that. That's what the locals are like. Just like what?
Well, they're all like that. Well, but the thing is, we were like going, do you have any books in English? They didn't care. They were all Portuguese. No, that's what we have. Get out of here, But the thing is, the Portuguese don't talk to the English, the Spanish don't talk to the Danish, because they're all speaking different languages, different cultures. Each one hosts their own monuments. They take care of their own monuments. Now, don't get me wrong, the Danish do a really good job. They have a really excellent monument service. A really good education system there too. So, they're into all that anyway. They're into, intellectual stuff and all. So there's a bit of a culture there to preserve this stuff now. When they were originally excavated, they didn't... it was a bit haphazard, but eventually the Monument Service went, well, we better start protecting some of these so a lot of the stuff that was dug up and found at these passage graves in Denmark has been lost into private collections and chucked out, but it wasn't a very professional excavation at the time. But regardless of that, they now have this great Monument Service. But I mean, they just don't talk to each other. Nobody seems to want to put this together. But you have to look at the whole problem. You have to look at the whole complete thing. Now, granted, I only concentrated on Ireland, but I have looked at the whole problem, and for the purpose of the book, I compiled the Passage Grave Cosmology of Ireland. But my sequel, The Megalith Acoustics Mystery, coming out in the fall, which will be available at jamesswagger.com. You basically, I looked into this whole wider problem because there's acoustics embedded inside these monuments alongside the astronomy. And at the time, I must say, I was doing the acoustics research alongside the astronomy research. I doubled up on it. And it was a very good, efficient reason for that. Because it made sense, rather than going back to visit all these places, to do more research, just doubled up on the time, the travel and everything. So, I soon became quite convinced that these guys were a sophisticated culture. They were very advanced in specific areas, albeit, but they were very advanced. People don't like to talk about cultures in the past being more advanced than us today. But I think, they had advancements in acoustics and the knowledge of altered states as well. So people kind of accept the astronomy. The New Grain Serious Mystery really gets into the astronomy. It's as much an archaeoastronomy data book than anything. I provide all the GPS of all the monuments that I talk about. I provide a good wealth of information in there. All the art's all in there to explain the monuments, and it's all done with screenshots of computer programs. I welcome people to use the computer program themselves. Go to stellarium.org and download the software. It's open source, freeware, to explore these monuments yourself and get into archaeoastronomy. I welcome that. I would love that to be an outcome of the book. I have a teaching project. I'm working with kids to get them into archaeoastronomy from a lovely lady I met from True Facebook group in Ireland. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But, the point is, these guys, they had a science. When you look at the cosmology in depth that I have done, and we can get into some of that, but you then think, right, okay, well, let's put them on a pedestal somehow. Let's start raising our awareness of these guys because they were smart with the cosmology that they had. But you go, well, it was primitive, it was observational cosmology, they made a couple of alignments and guessed a few things and got it right, and blah, blah. But then you put the acoustics with it, you go, right, well, these guys were, okay, that's a couple of sciences that they had. And then you address the logistics of what they did and how they carried multi-ton stones, and then you go, right, well, these guys were pretty good at engineering and logistics, and these guys just, they're a mystery. They're an absolute mystery, and they're an absolute beautiful thing to research because there's so much in it. There's so much in it. There's many people coming at it from something I've never even got into is geomancy, and that some of these monuments are all in straight lines, that these were actually mapped out across large terrain. I mean, these megalithic patches, tombs. They're in what they call megalithic cemeteries. I just like to call them megalithic complexes because it's a much better term. Calling them a passage grave only concentrates on the burial function. It doesn't concentrate on the astronomy of these places. It doesn't concentrate on the acoustics. It seems to slap a label on them. And when you slap a label on them, oh, that's just a grave. That's just something ancient and a grave and spooky, like, you know. And I often bring people to passage graves and you go, there was bodies in here, and they go, ooh, and get all freaked out, like. But the point is, like, these things were observatories first and foremost. This is where they made alignments, they checked, and especially the ones in Ireland, especially Newgrange, because, and notes right beside it, I mean, the lunar calculations and the lunar mapping they were doing, you know, the solar calculations that they were mapping out the solar year, they were mapping out the lunar months into a solar year and putting the two of them together, making combined calendars, like, you know, totally phenomenal, Bob.
You know, I've looked a little bit myself. You know, I've also, as I mentioned, I've been up to Denmark, and yeah, there they had. I don't, because I didn't get over to Copenhagen, but I went to an outdoor museum, a Viking outdoor museum, where they put into practice what the archaeologists think. And in that one day I spent at that place,
they love it, don't they?
Oh yeah, it really is a passion. Now again, I've been lucky enough to go to Iceland as well. And
have you? I'd love to go to Iceland, Bob. I've never been there. I'd love to go.
The similarities in culture, and I mean by what we call like myth and legend here, is historical fact almost for these people.
To them,
yeah, it really is.
They have a different approach, haven't they? They have a different approach.
It's like going back through time. It seems to be the more north you go throughout Europe, the further north you go, the older, well, the newer the old knowledge is, if you see what I mean. It does. And they don't seem to have any issues that the Vikings, way back, before we know of them as the Vikings, and how we've been taught through the Roman Christian ideology of these invaders, they were a trading nation.
Sure.
That's what they did. And the evidence for these ships, the ballast that they carried, can be found as far away as New Zealand.
Yeah, so, they covered some terrain, Bob. They really did, these guys. Like, you know, it's something I also look into for, not just for the megalithic civilization, which is kind of my route into all this, and because obviously writing 2 books on megaliths, like, it's kind of carving my niche. I actually have some guidebooks out there too, but I'm revamping them at the moment. I'm writing books because I've got a wealth of knowledge of these places, local information, and as well as other stuff. I ended up, and there isn't even an existing guidebook on Loch Crew, solely dedicated to it. So that's why I started to write the guidebooks, because I thought I would at least compile the information on it. There's no point in me going to these places, Bob, looking up all the GPS coordinates and hoarding the information and not helping and giving it to others, like. And so I said, well, at least put it in a guidebook and get it out there. It's quick, simple publication, and quite a cheap publication. Like. And but the thing is, like, I mean, you know, it's something else I research. So megaliths is what I'm concentrating on, and you know, I'm getting dragged into other cultures. I do research and write about other cultures, but this ancient seafaring question, like that I was talking to Miles about earlier, like 3000 BC, I think this place, this planet, was a very interesting, very interesting time. I mean, I think even just from the Vikings backwards, like, but like, I mean, the Vikings covered some terrain, and you know, they concentrate on Columbus discovering America. This stupid idea that Columbus discovered America, and that's like the only thing that you're allowed to think of Columbus onwards, like, and that's it. But the Vikings were there before it. There's evidence of I can't remember the guy's name. Somebody was there in 1000 AD or something up in Greenland and discovering the North American continent. But like, you know, you have Phoenician writing in Brazil. You have the Great Lake copper deposits after feeding the Bronze Age culture of Western Europe, because it's an exact point-for-point spectral analysis match for this copper. It's like this copper is pure grade, 99.9%. It could only have come for this region. It couldn't have come for anywhere else. It's a perfect match for the copper in Europe. So we know somebody, and it's like the amount of copper that's missing in up in the Great Lakes. They call it the Great Lakes copper heist because they don't know who took it. So somebody went and took all this copper and gave it to the Bronze Age culture. We don't know who it was. Possibly the Minoans. The Minoans are suspected for doing it because the Minoans were traders. Not only that, you have the Phoenicians the Phoenicians coming from the Lebanon region. They were known to have this purple uniform that they created from a purple dye, the special purple dye that they crushed up and made a dye out of it and made their uniforms out of. Didn't the Toltecs use this same bizarre uniform, and they used the same bizarre shellfish to make the purple dye to crush it all up, So you have these weird links across the world, and I think 3000 BC was a very exciting, vibrant time on this planet, and it's not what we're led to believe, Bob. It's not nowhere near it.
Oh no, I'm totally in agreement with you there, man. I mean, I'm not no historian. I'm not a James Swagger or a Miles Chris, but I am. No, seriously, man. I'm a northern bloke. I'm a pretty ignorant northern bloke, and it's even that. It's pretty obvious. I mean, we're even getting people telling us now that aliens did it. And as far as I'm concerned, why did they keep putting down these? Is it so hard to imagine that it could have been our predecessors?
Sure.
That perhaps we haven't always been as ignorant, that we could work massively cooperative. Perhaps there wasn't war or conflict. Perhaps we didn't need to enslave one another.
Sorry, Bob. Sarah just mentioned that there was the cocaine mummies as well there, and that's another one I forgot to mention. That's in the Historical Mysteries magazine I wrote as well. That this German lady, she done the DNA analysis on these mummies and found that there was cocaine and tobacco in their DNA and their hair, because the DNA of the hair is preserved for so long, and you can basically in 1 inch of hair discover what was being ingested in a person for over like 6 months in 1 inch of a strand. So if you took 1 inch of your hair today, Bob, you could tell how many units of alcohol, you could tell every plant product, you could tell everything that you've had in your body. Like, it's insane like that you can do that. But the Egyptologists, they branded her a pseudoscientist. They tried to crucify her. They first of all said she contaminated the samples, and she did it again. And eventually, backed into the corner, they admitted, quote, rudimentary contact. That's all the Egyptologists would admit. But this Egyptology, the Egyptians, did the people from Brazil come to Egypt and give them the goods, or did they go to Brazil and get the goods themselves? You got to wonder, I
reckon the Vikings were the world's first drug dealers. I reckon they were shipping it around. Not only what would have been medicine then, of course, but also they traded in knowledge of engineering,
And there's another thing. The Vikings have weird mythologies that go back deep rooted into history, and that was actually in that book as well. They
speak of giants that live in dugout areas in the ground, which is incredibly similar to what's being described at the Gigantian temple on the island of Malta.
Gigantia.
Right, that's it.
I was told off for that, Bob. I went gigantic.
Where the giants used to live. That's the home of the giants. That's what it actually means.
I had a Maltese guy say it 10 times over and over till I got it right. He wouldn't let me go. Gigantia. He kept saying it to me. He embedded it in my memory.
What's going to alarm you in years going to find out? You're going to find out he was a Polish refugee. That wasn't actually Maltese at all.
He was told to stand there and say it.
The similarities there, James, between the Icelandic legends of the giants that threw rocks at passing ships and so forth, and the home of the giant on the island of Malta. Now these two. There's explanations, because when they approached the houses that they had in Iceland and many of the Viking houses, they're half dug into the ground because, of course, they were working with thermal mass, something that we're now coming along with, and everybody's shouting and screaming and going, "Oh look, We should use thermal mass, you know what
Another thing interesting about the Vikings that I don't know if a lot of people know about is that they had lenses, extremely interesting crystal lenses, that they may have inherited from an older tribe, or they may not have manufactured themselves. They may have actually traded with somebody else who made the lenses, but they've got these really sophisticated ancient crystal lenses. And again, like, there's these weird crystal lenses all around the world. The Egyptians had them, the Babylonians, the Sumerians. They're toroidally ground. They're ground with something like the shape of a donut, like a toroid, which is extremely hard to do because then you have to cut crystal with crystal, and then the crystal that you cut it with has to be the shape of a donut. So the tool is more complex than the actual implement you made. So it's bizarre, bizarre.
Again, we are looking at them and seeing them as ignorant people without great technological advancement as we'd see it.
And I often wonder, Bob. This is where I think, because I get through the astronomy and I get through the acoustics knowledge that they had and their sophisticated knowledge of the brain and altered states, which was as much a science to them as anything, a metaphysical to science. But I get past all that and I go, well, the megalithic guys, why did they not have artifacts? Because then you have extremely engineered artifacts in Egypt. Like you got the sheath disc, the trilobe sheath disc, or some call it the lotus flower vase. And then you have crystal lenses, and you have the Antikythera mechanism, and you have all these weird, complexly engineered and remnants of high cultures. But the megalithic civilization, they just did it with stone and earth. But they've built they were basically effectively machines. These were celestial machines for calculating the heavens. And, I wonder why they just went that approach. And you got to understand, was it given to them? Was it given to these guys? Or did they, and if it was given to them by a mystery culture, now that just kind of shifts the goalposts a bit, but just go with that for a minute. If it was given to them by a mystery culture, and they didn't have a material-based civilization when it was given to them. In other words, if you take a group of nomads or a group of farmers and you give them a knowledge and you give them a science, they don't have any metallurgy, they don't have any metal, they don't have anything, they have nothing other than the soil on their feet. So what are you going to give them to build with? What are you going to? So you're going to teach them science, you're going to teach them knowledge, and you're going to use the materials that they have at their disposal. Now, the reason I say that is because I've linked some of the rock art up with the Dogon tribe in West Africa, and this is where it gets really strange, is that this mystery tribe in the Dogon in Western Africa, synonymous with the Sirius star system, and their celestial lore is all embedded with Sirius knowledge, and they say that they got their knowledge from star ancestors, and which they call the Nummo. And set that aside for a minute. That's a whole kettle of fish that, we say that's a strange kettle of fish in Ireland. It's just bizarre, this whole thing that they talk about. But, the whole thing is it's another entity in itself. But the thing is, the art that they use and the symbology that they use is indicative of the same art of the megalithic civilization. Now, the Dogon are a living tribe today, but they do date back to their origins in ancient Egypt. They use similar glyph systems, they use similar ideologies, symbology as ancient Egypt. And they were supposedly to have marched out of ancient Egypt around 3000 BC, heading up to North Africa, along the top of the North African continent, and then swinging around Tunisia and south into where they reside today in Western Mali. So, there is an ancient, there's many reasons for that, high position, but, they have a weird, Jewish connection like that. They have this, circumcision, and they have, again, some, Hebrew connections, and they have, this glyph system that they use that's similar to ancient Egypt, and, so they do date back to that time frame, they are associated. At least their Dogon masks that they make are to signify this 50-year festival, which is to what they say is to celebrate the orbit of Sirius around its other star. They say this 50-year event, they make a mask for it, and when you calculate all these 50-year masks, which they store in the cave, they actually can date them back as far as they are crumbling to dust, which puts them back into medieval, at least the 12th century. So we know they're deep into antiquity. And when you follow the migration routes, they are synonymous with ancient Egypt. It's pretty much accepted. It's anecdotal, and it's a complex story. You would need to read 2 or 3 books to actually understand that concept. The point is that they used the exact same symbology as the rock art megalithic builders of Western Europe. And what I mean by that, take for 2 examples, you got the triple water wave symbol. You've got the Dogon sun wheel, which I call it, which is basically a rayed disc or a circle with rays coming to a central point. Mostly 8-segmented circle. And then you also have the spiral as well, which was also at the Maltese temple as well as a Newgrange. And this spiral and rayed disc actually represented the same thing. It represented the same ideology to both people. It wasn't just the same symbol that they used. It was the same idea behind the symbol. So this is where the plot really thickens. And I got to wonder, did the megalithic builders get their knowledge given to them? Did they inherit it? Were they given this knowledge? This is how you map out the stars. This is how you map out precession. Okay, well, we've got nothing to build something. Well, you've got earth and stone. Align this way. Align it that way.
I reckon it's very, very plausible. Very plausible. But of course, they may have been able to communicate with one another. And we do not know. Like I say, we're always looking at this from our individual perspective and where we are. I tend to think that there could have been a lot more technologically advanced than we are. And I mean, if you were, if I was, back then in this so-called time, back then, and I had mapped out the stars, and I knew all this was going to happen. Maybe we'd just step out of it. Maybe we'd just step out of that. Maybe these civilizations are not lost civilizations. Maybe we're just not aware of them.
Sure.
So I think it's very, 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 very plausible, all of it. And it's a damn sight lot more plausible than what we've been told conventionally. Again, I really like the idea of that we're not such ignorant, lost, that in our not so distant past, really, because the monuments are still here, as you say. There's one that has been triggering quite a lot of, silliness, I think, just recently, and that's probably our most famous English Stonehenge. Yes.
Yeah, I've looked into Stonehenge for my sequel, the Megalith Acoustics Mystery. And I'm really keen to roll that out. I held off on that book printing. I wanted it out by the summer, but I was better to recall the book and say, I've got another 2 chapters I want to put into it. It'll be a lot better for it, and I want to keep the research as full as I can. But at the start of the book, I researched in Stonehenge, because Stonehenge is effectively an auditorium as well as it is a celestial monument. And when you look into the internal horseshoe-shaped ring of stones, effectively they have the effect of like a parabolic sound ear.
I've experienced it. Yes, I've experienced it.
But if you walk around the perimeter of a certain perimeter of Newgrange at a certain distance or a certain diameter, you can hear sounds being amplified. And how it does that is through constructive and destructive interference. It's quite a simple concept in sound physics and acoustics. And there's been a couple of guys, Dr. Rupert Till and another guy, has had 2 separate incidents to go there and explore this and do tests and measure this. Like, it's quite accepted now that it's an acoustic monument as well. But the reason they really were on this, on the hunt for the acoustics element, was because in tested at D'Urberville's in the novels, going back nearly a century now, it was known, it was wrote in there in the novel that it was like Stonehenge whistled in the wind. It made sounds in the wind, and it's got this weird whistling sound when the wind's blowing near it. So yeah, I mean, it's long been known for many centuries that it's whistling in the wind, like it's got this acoustics anomalies going on. But Yeah, I mean, it's Stonehenge again. It's a totally different monument. It's a stone circle. It's like the megalithic chambers. They're enclosed monuments inside a chamber. They've both got intentional acoustic design. This is the key thing. Now you got to understand that Stonehenge was a 1,000-year monument at least. The megalithic chambers dating 3,200 BC. These guys were in existence for about 1,500, 2,000 years. So maybe their acoustics now was evolving or devolving. I'm not too sure. I just know that they had different types of acoustics going on. Again, there's stone circles up in Scotland that have that have acoustics going on up there. And one of the most important, I don't know, you've been to Malta, Bob. Have you been to the Hypogeum?
No, I actually...
It's the most awesome thing on Malta. It's this 3-story cave system underground that they carved into the bedrock. And they found something 7,000 individuals buried in there. So the reason they call the Maltese temples, these like Gigantia temple and Scorva temple and Tahagrat and Hagar Kim, and Nidra temple, they call them all temples because there was never any bodies found there. And the reason there was never any bodies found there is because they had a place to bury the bodies somewhere else. They just did their astronomy there, and they did all their other little fertility rites there, and all their other little gimmicky things, if you want to call it that. But they just buried the bodies in the Hypogeum. Now, in Ireland, they cremated the bodies and they buried them at the megalithic chambers. So over here, they're called passage graves, and over in Malta, they're called temples. But they're effectively the same monument. They had the same astronomical specific design. It's like if I showed you a cathedral in Spain, and I showed you a cathedral in Belgium, and I showed you a cathedral in England. And to anybody, if you showed them the 3 pictures and they went, well, they're all one type. If you didn't know what the names they were, and you went, well, what's that? And you go, well, they're like a building. They're all doing the same thing. They're all the same type of design. They all got the same function. You would accept that they are the same type of monument. But because there wasn't any bodies found there, they called them, one of them a temple and the other one a passage grave. And there's nothing to join these things together. But so this Hypogeum place where they buried the bodies, it's got acoustics inside it too. And what they did was they carved this niche into the wall in the middle layer. It's effectively like something about 18 inches tall, 12 inches wide, and about 8 inches deep. It's like a niche, a little carved notch. It's something like you would put a statue into, but they didn't put a statue into it. Effectively, when you speak into this niche, only at the male vocal range, the whole building resonates, vibrates, there's an sound. So if you went like that into this niche, the whole thing resonates. It was acoustically tuned. And how they acoustically tuned it was, as you go down each layer, there's rooms upon rooms into other rooms. And rather put a doorway into the room, they put an aperture, a window, so that each room was like a bass box. So it's like a bass box coming off a bass box, coming off a bass box, going deep into the chamber. And then they have this really large, deep one for to hit the really long bass note at the bottom. It's one of the most sophisticated acoustic monuments on the planet. And it is absolutely awe-inspiring. And they're still trying to get their heads around it. They're still struggling with it, They're still struggling to accept, even though they tell you, this is how you activate the monument. You speak into this little niche and the thing activates. It's like putting a key into an engine. This is how you activate it, And this is the thing. These ancient monuments in Ireland, they're also acoustically tuned. These are also acoustic monuments.
Hold on to your key and your tuning. We'll take that break and we'll be back in about 6 minutes.
Dark City Radio is about finding solutions and working through things so that we can all come together and have a better world.
Dark City Radio is not one show. Dark City Radio is a station.
There is only one station.
Have we started?
Dark City for everyone. as long as you agree, it's for everyone.
And anyone can come on, and all's welcome, just about, nearly.
Everyone's welcome on Dark City, under the condition that they agree that everybody's welcome on the Dark City.
Never talking about me! You don't fuck off!
Well, fuck Baba. Okay, start again.
You've got to slur and sound like a proper fucking numpty.
Baba, come on the radio!
There is only one real station on the internet, of course, that is Dark City radio station. The others are all corporations.
You won't hear any advertisements whatsoever. There's not a commercial in sight.
Dark City Radio is everyone's radio, because our radio is your radio. It's the world's only non-corporate radio station. I'm Sarah, I'm the host from the I Am Show.
I am that I am. I am that I am. Bob, man.
Hello, I'm Bob.
Please, be quiet. Oh, he's a bastard!
Right, let's have a cup of tea.
No, that's not right. Dark City Radio differs from other stations. No. Dark City. Shut up.
Put it in your own words.
Shut up. I'm trying to put it in my own fucking words. Keep interrupting me. I'll get there. I'll be put on the spot now.
My name's Lee. I'm out in Spain. I lurk in the background in a lot of shows. I try and find out information, add bits and bits of info for the show host. Why is Dark City important to the world?
It's a bunch of fucking bastards all come together to fucking make things easy. That's all they're fucking doing. They're coming together to make life easy. We got to do everything to fucking stop them. It will be utopia.
It's absolutely brilliant!
I am thinking the overall unification and presence of Dark City Radio is all about baggage. Yes, if you come to Dark City Radio on your international airways, please make sure that you check in all baggage before you arrive. We will guarantee when you arrive at Dark City, all baggage lost forever. This is best service of Dark City.
Yeah, and I do a little bit in the background as well. I'm just learning to produce shows. So soon enough I'll be producing shows as well. And yeah, basically that's what I do in Dark City.
I am not allowed to do anything but appear on every show. If not at the front, in the back, sometimes in the middle, and sometimes just sat in the corner being quiet. I have no choice but to go on every show. I am the Dark City prisoner.
Shut up a minute. It's too hard to actually decide which one is my favourite, because they're all good. All the shows are good.
That was a bit better. Every piece of software that we use on the Dark City Radio is all open source, created by people in communities for the love of making great software. And they give it away for free. We tweaked it, we twisted it, and we turned things that weren't supposed to be used for this into a radio station. It's free in the sense that it doesn't cost anything, but it's also free in the sense that it's free from all corporate shackles. It's open source. Dark City Radio, we're spreading the globe. It gives them an opportunity to hear what people are researching and learning without the fear of it being airbrushed or photoshopped by some corporate media with an agenda. No agenda on Dark City. Everybody's got a voice.
On Dark City Radio.
Dark City Radio differs from other radio stations because Chris Sparky told me to say so. I am a prisoner in the depths of the Dark City. Thank you very much. Please call again. Is that it? Right. Well, has it finished, that jingle? It has. Welcome back to the Dark City Show with our very, very special guest this evening, James Swagger. We've also got on with us Lee Naris. He's sat there in the background being very quiet. We've got Howard Barry, who's with us in the room at the moment. We've got Sarah, and of course Miles Crisps from Divergent History. And they've all been at it again in the break. Lee's got a few things he brought in. But I'm going to throw it back over to James immediately and let these guys carry on, because I'm completely out of my depth here. I'll tell you what they've been talking about. Rick, I don't even know what it is.
Just for the listeners' sake, Bob, I was getting complimented on the break. I was, and I missed half of it. I missed half my compliments. But yeah, I got very passionate about this stuff.
You really appreciated your information and your knowledge, and the way you're putting it is being really appreciated, man. It is. So yeah, I think we left you with your key in the hand, ready to.
Here's the key thing, though, Bob. Mine don't make myself out to be an expert, and there is people make themselves out to be their experts. I have become very knowledgeable. I don't even like to say label myself. I'd like to think I'm very knowledgeable on passage graves. I don't know anybody else has been to as many passage graves as I have. I really don't. I doubt you would encounter. It became a bit of an obsession to me, but I was very lucky in my career as a systems analyst. I have to go into these big jobs, and I chased my career and I chased my CV. And so I was in Scotland, England, Wales, and Ireland. I also worked Denmark. I worked in Germany, France on 2 occasions, and my career just took me to these places naturally. And when I was in these remote areas, I was in megalithic territory. When I say that on my blog and on my biography page, I was just naturally there, and to have an interest, I was just blessed and lucky also to be near these places too. So, I've become knowledgeable and authoritative on them, but I don't want to call myself an expert in authority. I don't like that label, although there was people who would happily call themselves that label to get press and coverage and become a super author, and, to brand themselves like that.
What do you do then, James? Did we lose you?
Hello?
Nope, it's all right.
I had a bit of a glitch there.
Yeah, we had a clunk. It's okay. We can cope with a clunk.
So, yeah, I was very blessed in my career, Bob, and especially in the Scottish ones, the monuments in Scotland, because, these things are remote up there. Scotland's remote in itself in terms of what people, not to Scottish people, but I'm talking about, in terms of notoriety or fame. Stonehenge is so close to London. It's on, it's easily accessible, and any wonder it's a famous monument, it's got, a major world city close to it, people want to go and goof off it, they go and goof off it, Newgrange is exactly the same. There's a reason Newgrange is the most famous Irish one. And people in England don't know about Newgrange, although it's gotten a lot more notoriety. It made it onto Ancient Aliens, so it's kind of, the bubble's burst now. It was a big secret we used to keep over here for a while.
Well, Woodhenge, most people have never even heard of Woodhenge. They don't even know there's a Woodhenge very near to Stonehenge. They don't even know it's there. You must have been to the island of Bute then, James.
Bute and Argyll have been, yeah. They've been to both of them. But, yeah, I've an author coming on my own podcast to talk about Bute. Tell me why was he doing that? I can't remember the name of the author. I have a few people coming on. There are so many people coming on my own show to talk megaliths. You can understand why I bring people on my show to talk about the stuff that I'm passionate about, stuff I research. Mostly the core body of my show would be megaliths, ancient civilizations, ancient cultures. But there is one aspect. I think it was the geomancy of Bute. And these standing stones that are lying. My God, I forget now. I got the article submitted to me the other day.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of stone circles on the island of Bute. There's actually people there who are still the stone keeper, which is really nice.
Sure.
Yeah, it is nice.
I think it was Paul Devereux, and he was talking about these stones that line up with the mountain. There's sacred geography there, and that these stones line up. Mm-hmm. One stone points to the mountain, the other one stone. There's these alignments pointing to this sacred mountain there. from two different angles on Butte. Like. But yeah, I mean, Butte, Argyll, I've been the Inner Hebrides, the Outer Hebrides, Isle of Lewis, I lived on for a while. The Orkneys, the Shetlands. I was on the Shetlands for I actually wanted to go, I had a chance to go to the Faroe Islands, but I never took it, like, you know, I did want to get up as far as that, like, you know, because I was curious, was there anything there that you don't get to hear about, or, you know, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff in there.
Faroese language?
Sorry, say that again, Miles?
Sorry, there's the Faroese language, which is one of the most one of
Really?
the more obscure extant forms. It's another Indo-European language, but it's
Really?
an offshoot of an offshoot of Old Norse. But
fascinating. Yeah, is that anything to do with Icelandic then, or is it?
It would be
different?
that would be its most closely related existing language would be Icelandic.
Because
But
that's
apparently
extremely complex, isn't it? The Icelandic.
it is, and there's some sounds that they make that we don't. You sort of have to breathe through your nose and your mouth. It's like this funny VF sound. But
Hey Miles, do you know Daniel Tammet?
no, I don't.
Okay, no, just
what
sorry.
did he
Just
do?
Daniel Tammet remembered the value of pi to 22,500 places. He's an autistic savant.
He's the guy that learned the
Icelandic.
language in 7 days.
7 days he learned. That's why I asked you. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
when I didn't know his name. I remember there was this guy.
I hope
He'd
to ha-
already learned like 15 languages or something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, I
Yeah.
hope to have him on my podcast pretty soon. I hope to have
Really?
him. Fingers crossed.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's going to be an
Wow.
interesting. I've actually worked with autistic people in London before, so in autistic trust, like, so I do have some prior knowledge. But you know, very interesting guy, and the complexity of the Icelandic language, again, that's a mystery in itself. Like, you know, they were so proud that he came and learned that, but. You know,
The only thing that would be harder, I think, is if you tried to learn one of the Khoisan click languages of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa.
I think it would be easier to learn dolphin language or something than Icelandic. I don't know.
Well, some of those languages actually have, I think, up to 20-something different types of clicks. And it's this difference in consonants like we have between a D, a T, and a K.
Fascinating. Yeah, so I I thought I'd just throw that in about Daniel Tammet because I have his book here, Born on the Blue Day. Truly a remarkable story, Daniel Tammet, like, and the mysteries of the mind. So, should I just say, like, you know, that's what I do on my show. Like, I love mysteries, any sort of a mystery. It doesn't have to be ancient, or it can be quite relatively recent too. You know, I just love getting to the root of mysteries. Like, show me the data, show me what you got, and I'll try that systems analyst approach, as you say, Miles. And that's a good approach. Like, you know, give me what you got. If you don't have data, then you don't have a mystery. It's fanciful. Exactly. It's a concept. It's not a mystery now. The mystery is when you got a bit of fact. It's a myth, even. Yes. Yeah.
You know Lionel Fanthorpe's work with mysteries, Spring-Heeled Jack, and the like.
I don't know. What's his name?
You'd like Lionel Fanthorpe. He's fantastic. I could send you some links of he being on Coast to Coast.
Oh, right.
There's some coffins in Barbados that that were moving themselves, and the British governor of Barbados at the time, this is in the 1800s, I think, had the tomb sealed, and they broke the seal about 6 months later, and one of the coffins was three quarters of the way up the steps. They had put sand everywhere to see if there were footprints and everything like that before they sealed up the tomb. Nobody has any idea how that happened.
Really? Gotta check this out. Gotta check that out. I listen to Coast a lot too, like on Red Ice, and hope to get on Coast to Coast pretty soon. I spoke to Tom Danheiser the other day, so fingers crossed I'm going on a Coast to Coast show. Fingers crossed,
Fantastic.
Anyway. If I can, but it's tough to get on there. There's a long waiting list, unless you know somebody to jump the queue. But I do know somebody to jump the queue, but I'm still waiting on that. But yeah, so, like, I mean, you know, the megaliths for me, here's the funny one. The megaliths for me, when I grew up in school, I asked questions, and this is the absurdity of it. In Ireland, they don't like to tell you that they don't know the answers, that they don't know things, like. And all the Ordnance Survey maps, we used to go to geography class, and all the Ordnance Survey maps have little megalithic symbols on it. Like, look, the image of a dolmen or something like that, and you have to do these analysis of towns in geography class, and you've got to say, there's a river to the town, you talk about the mountains, and you talk about the how the town developed around the region and why it developed, and so it was down to the infrastructure and stuff like that. And you would talk about tourist regions in the area, and we used to always ask why there were so many of these megalithic places and what they were, and they just have no idea, but they wouldn't tell you. Just put it in.
Yeah, a bunch of old people did it, and they're dead now.
Yeah, and just put it down anyway. It's a tourist attraction. Well, what is it? What type of tourist attraction is it? I don't know. It's a stone. Why is the stone the tourist attraction? But
at least they don't bulldoze them.
yeah. Well, there's been people. Did you see that? Did you see the pyramid that got bulldozed in? Is it Belize or Guatemala? Can't remember. One of this.
Well, there was one that they turned in. They used the limestone to turn it into a road.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
They just scooped it. They just scooped it out and filled the road.
Well, apparently there's a German entrepreneur, or not entrepreneurs, but basically rich German guys that illegally hire these black market companies to come in with giant saws and helicopters, and they'll actually take a small Mayan stone thing and cut the stone up such that they could actually haul it off to a ship in international waters and then re-erect it somewhere else.
Really?
Yes.
That's insane.
Well, do you know how many guards that are posted around, I think it's Teotihuacan? The temple of the Pyramid of the Moon and Sun?
I've never been to Central America on my travels. It's one of my next hotspots to go. You can understand why I want to. It's like a mecca for me. I will get there, but... Well,
it's like a 250-acre site, and there are
massive,
guards. 2 guards for the entire site. Yeah, they each have a shotgun, that's it.
Ah, come on. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's not good, is it?
The theft, you wouldn't even believe.
Why you even have just the 2 guards at that point? That's so ridiculous. Why just even have the 2? You know?
Yeah, I'd hate to be that guard too. I mean, 80 guys with big guns come in. Oh crap!
We're gonna take a few items there. Help yourself, guys. Go on ahead, knock yourself out,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I just on the megaliths, I grew up, and I was always, there's nothing to see here. That was always the official line. We can't know anything about the past. And that's the archaeological perspective. If they need to dig it up, they want to see the pottery. They want to see the pot jars. Dig it up, find out, have a look where that's carbonated, that's not done.
We have the same thing in America, man, with where all the native mounds and old things like that. In Western Virginia and West Virginia, we have mounds. I've been to some of them.
Is that where you're at, Miles?
Yeah, I'm from Virginia.
Virginia, and, right? Awesome.
Near the West Virginia border in the north, but
Serpent Mound. I looked in. Serpent Mound's awesome looking. I'd love to go to Serpent Mound.
Yeah,
in Ohio.
Yeah.
That's in Ohio, yeah.
There's 3 kinds of mounds: effigy mounds, that's the serpent mound. Then you have just conical burial mounds, and then you have what they call a temple mound, which is basically a step pyramid made out of dirt with a little top.
Yeah.
But most of them are all bulldozed over. The city of St. Louis, Missouri, used to be called Mound City.
Have you seen Stonehenge in the East Coast?
I have, and there's actually an example of an arch construction of a I wouldn't call it a cyst chamber, but it's essentially it's a subterranean tomb that 25 feet with a roof is made out of ashlar stone construction.
Really?
Of irregularly shaped block. Sort of like slithers of limestone that the cleavage is such that it comes horizontal. It's kind of like stone sticks, and they're put up, and they actually have an arch.
Fascinating. You know Scott Walter, do you?
No. What did he do? I might know by what he...
Yeah, he's on the History Channel, America on Earth.
Oh, I don't watch TV.
I do, yeah. Well, he's done the America on Earth series. I've had him on the show. Well, he's also an author as well, which is why he's on the program. But he's because I only really do book reviews for my own show. But yeah, Scott Walter wrote about the Kensington Runestone and the hooked X and.
I've heard of the Kensington Runestone.
Well, that's what he did. He's the one. He's the guy that researched that. And they say it was faked, but it's not a fake to me. I've looked at the evidence. I don't think it's a fake.
Yeah.
there was a lot of controversy over its original thing, but I don't know where the controversy came from. Like, it just wasn't examined properly, if you ask me. But anyway, I've looked at the evidence. I don't think it's not a fake. Like,
yeah. I've been following mostly Native American things and the peopling of America. With the most of the evidence we have is actually linguistic. So I've been taking a linguistic approach. Papua New Guinea fascinates me. 30,000 years of originally inspired agriculture.
Hey, Miles, I got to get you on my podcast, Miles, because I tell you what, I look into linguistic mysteries as well, and man, it's just awesome. Yeah, I tell you, have you looked into the Ainu Japanese links with Basque?
No, I haven't heard of that. I know the Ainu are a completely different language family and a native. They presumably occupied all of the Japanese islands, or at least the big ones.
At one point, and they got sure. Well, they apparently got linguistic links. What them linguistic links are, I think it's quite strong from my perspective.
The language of Basque is sort of like a mystery language family. It's just considered its own extant language family. There's no other related language.
It's supposed to be closely linked with Ainu in Japan. You know,
that's fascinating.
That's the daddy there in linguistic mysteries.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about Sanskrit. They talk about Sanskrit words in the Andes and stuff, like for place names and all. And that's just a word, but I mean, there's many.
Also accidents that happen. There's some words in Korean where I think there's actually a word in either Japanese or Korean for like pain or something like that. It's actually the same thing, but you know, like there's always a fly in the ointment. You know, usually more than one fly. Accidents happen, but
I've got to look more into this linguistic mysteries of Ainu, but they say that the Basque people, they actually look different. You know, they've got long aquiline noses, different like a reddish coloured skin as opposed to the tan Spanish. Like, you know, that they literally look like they're dropped out of somewhere and just dropped there in the middle of nowhere. Like, you know. But they call them Atlanteans,
which would mean presumably that they were overwhelmed, and this is just a little pocket of what had been there before.
Exactly, they're surrounded.
When you see a cluster of trees in a neighborhood that was built with clear-cut construction,
exactly.
It's like, this is a little bit of what used to be everywhere.
Exactly, and the encroaching suburbs have just swallowed the patch of trees, and the same with the populace that's left there. Like, yeah, totally, I like that ideology.
Have you heard of the connection with Proto-Germanic and Semitic?
Semitic as well, yeah. I've not much. I can't remember what it was. I just know that there's a link there too.
Ablaut. Ablaut is when you change the vowel in the middle of a word so that you change its tense, like sing, sang, sung, drink, drank, drunk. You know, you don't say drinked, you say drunk.
Oh.
You know, that's called ablaut when we call them irregular verbs or strong verbs in English. But the tradition of doing that's all about, you know, the Semitic language family is all about doing that. And apparently about 30% of the words in what we think of to be Proto-Germanic are very similar to the words of Ethiopian, of all things.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's called Amharic.
Yeah, you know about the Aymara language being so like almost like a computer language. The Aymara in South America, in the Andes. Do you know about them?
I haven't. Yeah, I know about those people, but I don't know about
their language is apparently being able to put into a computer program to translate.
Is that the same thing about Hebrew though? Like,
I don't know much about Hebrew, but I know that the Aymara language has a check system which means yes, no, or maybe. It's like a 3-point. It's like a on, off. It's almost like a binary system, on or off, like, or maybe.
Oh, okay. There's another language that only has 4 verbs, and just attach a noun to it. Like if you wanted to say a car, you just have a word for box, and you'd say a go box. You know, there's like a verb for go, a verb for do, a verb for to be, and you know, like one other thing, but yeah, everything else is text.
The thing about the Aymara language is that a guy was able to, in the 80s or something, before when computers were like the size of a calculator, like, you know, he was able to program the translate Aymara language, like, because it's so structured, and they reckon it's so structured that only it was intentionally constructed that way. He couldn't have done it any other way. Like, it had to be intentionally constructed language as opposed to one that naturally evolved from a variety of sources or sounds or whatever.
That's a dangerous topic.
Yeah. Well, a dangerous topic. Like, the only reason I go down that route was because I had an Atlantis author on with me called Rand Flemath, who's coming on again, and he'd gone into that and talked about some of the South American cultures and the Aymara, but they are by far definitely a very unusual culture, the Aymara people, and they do have a very unusual language. And yes, it is like...
And native languages are always more complicated than written languages. Written languages sort of clean themselves out because in order to write it down, you usually need to simplify it. It's even said that some Native American languages in the southwest of the United States, a person wasn't really competent at speaking until their mid-teens. 6 and 7-year-olds are pretty fully competent at speaking the English language by that age. But in these cultures, you have these sentences that are just insanely constructed grammatically from what we would assume. I could actually pull you up some examples of that from the linguist Dr. John McWhorter.
Sure.
I highly recommend his work. But yeah, so
on the Basque Ainu thing, I think there was the reason I come across that there was a Japanese prime minister went to visit. Whether he spoke Ainu, I don't know, but he had recognized or understood some of the Basque people by the structure of their language, and he got really confused and he didn't understand it. And there was an article about that, but there's many linguistics have looked into the Ainu and Basque language, but I think culturally, perhaps 3000 BC, there were seafaring nations, that were able to.
The Proto-Germanic would have been about 2000 BC.
Right. Well, I think this is an exciting time on the planet, 3000 BC, in that seafaring was there was guys traversing the globe, going all over the place. It's not as condensed and concise
as they had done for thousands of years.
For thousands of years. There's ancient maps out there, and they show I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but they were showing latitude and longitude, and I've looked into the longitude problem, and latitude is relatively easy because
you need a chronometer to do it. Otherwise, you need an accurate clock.
For the listeners, the chronometer is a device that was set down, and the British Crown set down £20,000 to
1760s,
something like that. Yeah, to devise a clock piece or something that would work at sea that could take in the roll and pitch of the ship, and they could keep time at sea. They could know where they were because they were crashing their ships and they were losing their precious cargo and the lives of the people on board. So they needed
put a grandfather clock with the pendulum swinging just keep time.
It's not much good on a boat so. So they have this thing called a chronometer. So that's why these ancient maps are so important, because somebody had figured out longitude. Now there is another device called the Tanoa, which is an African tribe had this, and I've only found one article on it, but it's a very interesting mindset on it, in that they may have had tables of lunar calculations and known where the moon was and used the moon as a reference point with a little eyepiece on it.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
I know, when it gets around the need for a technological machine-engineered precision gear, something like that, And they were able to have...
The other way is there's a way to calculate the stars at night and do a bunch of, charts and stuff. And it would take you a while, but you'd eventually figure out where you were.
Sure.
Meriwether Lewis was trained by Thomas Jefferson to do that on the Lewis and Clark expedition. Actually.
Well, what I like about that Tanoa is, they say, well, then that doesn't explain these longitude. Well, somebody needs to explain the longitude on the maps. But, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, I quite like that book because it explains some of the books, but I know the Hapgood thing that we were talking about, I've got issues with that too,
Mid-Atlantic Ridge, man.
Yeah. Well...
how did it plow through that? Those rocks are a lot older than when he's talking about that big landmass having passed through them.
Sure. I like the maps thing that he goes into,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The maps stand on their own, though, Miles. The maps stand on their own.
They do.
No, he's bringing
Antarctica
the maps into
being two different land masses, completely devoid of ice. you know.
It's a bit of a reach, like, you know. And I understand they're going like.
Well, actually, no. I think that's the more credible part.
Well, yeah, but like, I mean, you've got the geologists saying. See, I'm open to. I know there's ice core samples saying that there's sediments in the ice, and the sediments they're that fine that they can only come from the riverbed. So that means that to get into the ice, that they had to have free flowing rivers. So therefore, yes, these ice core samples go back 10,000 years or something like that. So it was free of ice.
It's further ago than that, but.
There's high position. Maybe it was even 4,000 BC. I haven't looked at all the ice core data because I don't have it in front of me. You know, I'm already reading somebody else's rendition of ice core data.
Agreed.
But some say 4,000 as early as 4,000 BC. Some say 10,000 BC. But the geologists say a million years. So you know,
I was going to say that what I've heard is that somewhere between about 1.5 to 2.5 million years ago, ice free.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's you know, there's so much data out there and so many opinions. It takes a long time to sift through it, like, you know. As you say, a systems analyst approach is good, like, but you know, then you got the woolly mammoth thing. The woolly mammoth thing does not
frozen in situ with the grass and the fruit on the trees in Siberia.
You know, do you think that it gives that pole shifting any credibility, or just on that alone?
I don't know about, what do you mean poacher thing?
Sorry? You're going to blame the poachers?
Wait, no, I thought you said poacher. I was going to say, what the hell are poachers? I must have misheard you. No, I think the phenomenon of things being frozen very quickly like that would obviously be placed on an influence from the sun. And the sun's cycles are, just beginning to be understood, and Robert Schoch's work recently has been on just that.
I've had Robert Schoch on Forgotten Civilization and the solar or outburst theory and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty fascinating too, like, you know. But
I've got maybe a stupid northern bloke question here.
Go for it.
The alignments of these megaliths, which can be found all over Earth, which are currently seem to be forming into straight lines, over thousands of years, of course. And we've actually had landmass movement. So how come they line up now if they lined up then?
No, the movement's really, really slow.
Yeah, no, I do get that it's really slow.
You got two alignments. Sorry, Rob. Right. You got two alignments. It's a good question, actually. You got two alignments because you have a sun alignment. But the sun alignment will always work now as it will work in 5000 BC. Now, there is a slight variation.
Relative to the precession of the equinox.
Well, the precession of the equinox is going to knock the star alignments out. But so there's a variation in the sun. Like, I mean, the sunbeam comes in and hits the back of Newgrange. It actually once hit the very back centre, but like it's now migrated a couple of inches, but not very much. Like, I mean, it's migrated a little bit, but the constellations migrate a lot. They shift 1 degree every 72 years. So that kind of answers your question, I think, Bob. Like, so yes, the constellations get knocked out pretty quick, but the sun and the moon is a 19-year.
But the sun also.
I was talking about the physical alignment.
1 degree a year.
Yeah, the physical alignment on the Earth. Even magnetic north's moved, hasn't it? So that there is something moving there. It just seems weird to me if it is been moving, and that's 17 degrees, isn't it? That I think it's 17 degrees it's moved over a relatively short period of time when you consider what you gentlemen have been discussing today. So again, if things have moved that much, how come they align now? Yeah, physical alignment on Earth.
Well, the Sphinx isn't.
If they did align when they were built.
Well, the Great Pyramid is aligned to true north within 3/60 of a degree. Apparently, I haven't measured it myself, but that's what it's quoted at. Apparently, it's more accurately aligned to true north than actually Greenwich Mean Time, and that's what our best tool is like. But here's the thing: I often hear people quote that the Great Pyramid. The Earth's been hit off its axis, and the same people are, by a comet or whatever. I know, but the same people that are quoting that are saying that the pyramids are 50,000 years old, but then that can't be right because it's aligned to true north, like, so Did it get knocked off its alignment? Did it get knocked
Or
off
did
its
they
alignment?
screw up at the beginning and now it just happens to be accurate?
Or did they know where it would be?
Yeah. Did it
You
get
see,
hit?
that's what I was getting.
Maybe they calculated how much is going to get knocked
That
off
it
its
would have,
access line.
yeah,
They
that it
calculated
would.
when society would get such that it would actually give a damn about such a thing and actually analyze it scientifically.
Here's
fair enough.
we were sorry, Bob. We were actually talking about myself and Miles there before we were going to get here. Is that like the Hapgood's theory that of pole shift like is problematic, and the reason it's problematic is, and this is what I'm the physicist. This is the physicist talking, by the way. You know, it's the Earth is not circular. It's not a pure sphere. It's obloid. It's flattened at the top and the bottom, like, and the pressures
It's
for that.
like a pear too. It's like bigger at the south. I
It's
think.
abnormal looking shape. It's bizarre looking. It's not like it's always drawn as a globe, like, you know, this perfect circle. I have a globe downstairs, and like it's made that way to spin on a globe. So people just see globes and they just think it's like an orange shape, but it's not. It's flattened to the top and the bottom, so it can't. They talk about it's shifting like the skin of an orange, you know, but it can't shift like the skin of an orange. It's just not the shape of an orange, like, you know. So this whole Earth crust displacement can't work. The physics for it just isn't there, like, you know. So I got major.
Geology certainly isn't there for it.
Geology is not there. Well, the geology is the physics of it too, like, you know. So
Well,
geophysical, yeah. So that's where I've got major.
Although the
issues.
poles do shift. We've seen that with, again, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Right?
Yeah,
They do.
slight amount, but not like. I don't think 23 degrees though. Like, well,
Well, I thought the poles reverse themselves though.
no, we're talking magnetically. They do magnetically.
Yeah.
I'm talking.
magnetic. Yeah,
magnet-
but it doesn't actually like flip the planet or cause any physical motion. It's just magnetically they flip on
Yeah,
themselves.
they magnetically flip.
How does that happen? I've always wondered.
Yeah, you know, they talk about solar activity linked to solar radiation hitting the planet and feeding into the poles, and then that.
So it's not an internal process with the core of the Earth.
That too, yeah.
generates magnetism?
Well, they say that the poles are fed with magnetic and solar radiation, and it heats up and it builds up, and then the viscosity.
Oh, okay. From the solar
w-
winds. Okay.
Yeah, and the heating mechanism will change the viscosity, and then it can spin and flip at certain times. So
okay.
that's the
'Cause
mechanism.
It's relatively regular, I was led to believe.
Yeah, but we know it does flip because there's magnetic records, like. But so people do get confused between magnetic pole shift and geophysical pole shift, like. But, so that was kind of what we were talking. But the whole Hapgood thing, I think Hapgood served good to bring the idea of the ancient maps to light. I think the maps
Yes,
are interesting.
absolutely.
I think the maps are very interesting. But and here's the other thing: one of the maps. Let me think which one it was. It could be the Piri Reis map, and the cartography section of the U.S. Army done a projection because the Army has a cartography section because they want to center the projection on their target zone or whatever for military reasons. They would center the map a projection. We're centered on Greenwich Mean Time as our world view, so east and west is made of Greenwich Mean Time. So, but you might want to, for military purposes, you might want to center your projection on. You know, whatever, pick a zone in the world, like, you know, so that's why they do that. So Moscow. Yeah. So for that purpose, that's why they have that. So they worked on the projection of the Piri Reis map, and they reckon it was centered on Aswan. And you can calculate the magnetic variation of the map. It's quite a complicated process. But they reckon that the last time it was centered there, they reckon that the Tropic of Cancer at Aswan, the last time it was there, because it does drift a little bit, this magnetic tilt in the Earth. The physical tilt in the Earth that varies. The wobble, that it will vary, and the last time that it varied was 3775 BC. So they reckon they can actually date the time that the original map was drawn due to the projection that it is 3775 BC. So I think that's one of the most interesting
Assuming
things.
it was accurate.
Assuming it was accurate. Well, it's accurate. It's assuming the Tropic of Cancer was migrating. And assuming we know our present rate of, you have to calculate the rate of.
Yeah,
assuming we have all that data. So there's a couple of
76 years the sun moved, or whatever it was, 70-something years the sun, the angle of the Earth at the summer solstice and the winter solstice will be either 1 degree more northerly or more southerly, depending on which end of the, wobble you're on.
Sure.
And if you're in the north or it'd be opposite for northern or southern hemisphere.
People always ask me about, what is precession like, and I talk about, well, there's a mechanism for precession that this wobble is from the moon, and then some people don't like that. Some people think the whole solar system's wobbling, and I kind of tend to agree that maybe the solar system is wobbling. What's causing that mechanism, it's got to be big, and there's all sorts of theories out there. There's all sorts, we have a failed second sun. But regardless of what the mechanism is, they've calculated the moon-Earth wobble theory of precession over maybe 100 times. They've retweaked the calculations, and they still don't work out. They're still trying to rework it. But there is some indicative evidence to say that the solar system's wobbling due to satellites and stuff. So we really don't even know. We're only getting to grips with precession ourselves, but only the actual hard data, But these ancients were aware of precession, and they were aware of it because observational cosmology, they looked at the sky. They would have put a standing row of stones up, and they...
I think the reason they did that is for travel.
Yeah, I think they were... Yeah, and I agree with you on that, Miles, and not a lot of people put that together. They just go... I have a precessional calculator theory for Newgrange, and it stands up well.
You don't need that for farming. Yeah, you just need to know. Okay, it's spring now.
Thank you, Miles. I had a conversation on a chat show last night, and the guy tried to shoot me down, going, "These guys are sophisticated calendars for farming." I went, "No, you don't need a sophisticated."
My father grew up as a subsistence farmer on the Blue Ridge of Virginia. He rode a horse hauling corn into a grist mill that was powered by a miss and bang steam engine out of Bentonville, Virginia in 1950. Subsistence farming sucks, by the way. All these people that, it was so great back then, just farming, you have all the... Farming is backbreaking. And, it didn't rain in August for 2 weeks. Okay, we're going to starve to death.
But farmers know when to plant seeds. They're intuitive. They know
what I was getting at is it's easy to figure out when the equinox is. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. It's just okay, the sun's kind of hitting that mountain this way. Okay, time to plant.
And then I had somebody else then in the chat box ask a question and go, well, there is the idea of planting at the moon. And yes, I do that myself. I actually plant at full moons. They talk about the water extraction rates better and the soil takes better and you get a better harvest. That's okay. You still know when there's a full moon because you look up and you see the thing, okay? So even if you take that,
And if you put a plant under growing lights, it doesn't matter what the moon's doing. You're artificially controlling the environment.
Sure.
With more influence.
These guys did need... I think there was a necessity, Miles, and I agree with you on that there's a necessity for this complex measurement of precession. And I do think Newgrange... it's from the center of... I should talk about the rock art. There's a triple spiral on the entrance stone of Newgrange, and then there's a center line to show the equinox line. And then there's this triple spiral on the inside of Newgrange. And this triple spiral on the inside of Newgrange is 1/3 the life size or the full size carving on the thing. But from the center of the tri-spiral to the center line, I've measured it myself, and it's exactly 1 degree of precession from the center of the tri-spiral. And I think that the tri-spiral represented the star Sirius. Now, that's the whole kettle of fish in itself. It's a whole other pink elephant in the room if you want to go down the series route and what the Dogon's artwork is doing there. Don't really want to go into that in the book, and I never did. Just mention it at the end that it's there, and it's up for other people to carry on the research. But the triple spiral is there, and it's also aligned to Sirius at the time when Newgrange was built, And the thing is, it's not just that. Sirius appears on the horizon on the same day it's aligned, the 21st of December, winter solstice. The sun rises, it's aligned, it does its thing.
You mean
goes
21st?
Down. 21st of December. Or it can be 22 sometimes as well. It depends on the year that's in it. But regardless, it's usually the 21st.
True, yeah.
So I'm talking the winter solstice, by the way. So there's winter solstice. Well, the thing is, at the same time, Sirius, the same evening, 12 hours later, Sirius comes up on the horizon. And it's almost doing the same thing as the Sun in 3200 BC. Then you've got the defective precession. But
the other thing is during the winter solstice, that's how you have to find the Tropic of Cancer, because that's the furthest north that the sun is due top in the sky that you can get at noontime during the minimum. That's how you define the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn.
Sure, and I do think that's what these guys were doing. I think they had the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn mapped out as well, Miles. Definitely agree with that. But
I'm just trying to say for the audience, that's why this is important.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it wasn't just to get to beam of sunlight to come down the chamber. You know, it was. Yes, it was a spectacular.
Ooh, it's pretty. No, that's not why.
Yeah, it was like it was an astronomically aligned machine, albeit made out of stone and earth. A celestial machine, if you want to call it. But the thing is, this tri-spiral lines up with Sirius eventually. So I think they waited till they were 1 degree of precession, and they go, right, start counting. And they go, right, stop counting. And it was 72 years later it entered the chamber. And then it migrated out of the chamber again. But the ancient Egyptians were known to align their monuments to star Sirius. And when it fell out of alignment due to precession, they would rip their monuments down. And they would, and a couple of 100 years later, and start building them again. They just leave the foundations in. They would put the new alignment to Sirius again when it fell out of alignment. Now the thing is, if you notice the effect of precession taking effect, and you did nothing but watch the skies, I think you would monitor this. You would try and figure it out. Now, maybe you discovered it by a standing row of stones one day. I'm just trying to think of mechanisms how this can come about, because that's good for readers to understand. There might be if you can give somebody a simple mechanism how something kind of comes about, that's good. That helps people understand. It's not the only reason for doing it, but it's nice for some people to see that. Like, if I have an idea, I'll put it in there. Maybe they had a stone row, they aligned it to a constellation, and it fell out, and they went, "Oh right, well there's something happening there other than our normal seasons and other than our normal spring and equinox. We have this bit figured out. We know the moon cycles. We know what's going on throughout the solar year, but there's something else at play." So regardless of how they figured it out, sure enough, they knew about it at one point. But the thing is, this tri-spiral is explained. If it represented Sirius, it would explain why it was inside as well. It exists nowhere else in the megalithic empire, the triple spiral. But it just so happens that Newgrange was aligned to it at that latitude, at that time when it was built.
Right.
You know, so that was kind of where I ended up in the book, because I thought it was the pinnacle.
What do you think about Shock? Wasn't Shock talking about there being vitrification of rock on Newgrange, or was it a different monument?
He talked about Scotland, I think it was.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps. I don't think he was talking about it in Ireland. Maybe he mentioned it in Ireland.
I thought there was something in Ireland. I just don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't think it was Newgrange.
No, I don't think it was Newgrange. There is examples of it here. There are also examples of it in Scotland anyway, at a castle as well. But some rocks have been vitrified in the past. Yeah. I like his theory though. That would certainly explain it. Whether that was the wrong
Cappadocia and sites like that out in Turkey, where they have those cities underground.
Yeah. That could be a good reason for why they were there. I'm trying to think of the other one, Derlinculia as well. It's a very interesting one. Have you seen Derlinculia, Miles? The underground city?
That sounds familiar. Is that where is that?
Turkey as well, I think.
It's in Turkey. Okay.
Yeah, it's got a bizarre, it's got vertical. It's like a 3 or 5 story cave system. It's like you could house 20,000 people. You know, it's at the engineering precision. I mean, because they were carving rooms underneath rooms, they have the pillars all lined up with the next. They knew they had forward planning to build it in levels instead of one level. You know, they have levels above each other with the pillars being supported by the ones above, like a massive undertaking project. You know, almost civil engineering in ancient times.
Right.
But going back to the seafaring thing, Miles, I definitely think these guys were seafarers. They mapped precession. They had ways, and I just think that these guys thought in different ways, Miles. They had it, like I say, that device to Tanoa, it explains longitude. Maybe they had different ways of measuring longitude. You have to start thinking outside the box. There could be natural and more intuitive ways that didn't really take extremely engineered artifacts to go and do things like,
Yeah, and there's no reason to calculate latitude if you're not going very far over land with foot traffic. I mean, only if you're sailing around long distances does it even become relevant.
Sure. But I do think, sure enough, somebody has measured in the past. And there's some ancient maps too that show High Brazil. They call it High Brazil on the maps, and off the coast of Ireland in a place called Porcupine Bank. There's a geological sandbank called Porcupine Bank, and below the surface of the water, it looks like a porcupine's back is across profile, and it's the size of about London, 20 miles in diameter or something like that, 30 miles in diameter.
Yeah. And how deep is it?
I think maybe 80, depends on the tides. I think about, well, not the tides, I think it's about 80 meters, something like that. I'd have to check that.
Okay. So it would have been exposed within about 7, 8, 9,000 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but it's on these ancient maps, and these ancient maps come back from the times of Alexander the Great, apparently. And there's several of these maps showing High Brazil, but it's showing High Brazil the same size of the landmass, in exactly the location where Porcupine Bank is off the coast of Ireland, about 100 miles off the coast of Cork. So you have these mythological Celts the Celts talking about this, their mythology is talking about the Tuatha De Danann, which basically means other race of people, coming from the Western Seas. So, did they come from the Western Seas? The megalithic monuments, people always concentrate on this 3000 BC time frame, but there was two waves, especially in Carnac and especially in Sligo Bay. Two natural landing bays, by the way. The Gulf of Morvan and Sligo Bay are natural places you would land if you came in ships or droves. But these places are dominated megalithic theme parks, if you want to call it that. There's something like 5,000 archaeological sites alone from megalithic times in and around Sligo alone. That's from standing stones, stone roads, just in Sligo alone. Now a lot of them are various states of decay and ruin, but there's 5,000 there alone. But there's two waves. There's the 5,000 BC megalithic cemetery of Carrowmore, and then there's other sites associated with that. And then there's another wave, the Carroll Keel. So it seems to be there was two waves came, 5,000 BC and 3,000 BC. So maybe this megalithic civilization was in existence for 4,000 years. We definitely know 2,000, quite possibly, to see people say maybe even 4,000. But so there's more mysteries there with the megaliths to be unveiled. There really is, but these guys that you say, Miles, could map for a reason.
If they were on that island at that time, it would stand to reason when it flooded around 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, they would have gone probably to Iceland and then Greenland.
Well, if you look at where it's at, Miles, 100 miles off the coast of Cork, you could go up, down. You would go to the nearest landmasses. The nearest ones would be Ireland and France. Brittany sticks out. So,
okay.
So the two most natural places, Ireland and Britain and France, would be the places you would hit first. It depends. It doesn't mean you go exactly due east, but if you got hit with winds or whatever way you were sailing, you would go south, east or northeast. But you would still, you would still hit the west coast of Europe. That's where you would like to head. Maybe they went to. I mean, if they had to go the other way, you'd have to pretty long wait before you hit America. So. So maybe did they know that land was there? Most likely, if they had seafaring knowledge. Did they want to live there? No, maybe they only just lived on this one island, and they were able to just. Maybe they had a paradise there. Who knows? So. It's just one piece of little bizarre knowledge that I actually mentioned at the end of the book in my New Grand Series mystery. That because everybody wants to know who are these guys, where did they come from? But I don't think this is the only place they come from. I think it was probably a colony that they had, and I think that if these guys were as sophisticated as I think they were, and they were going around mapping, because they were seafarers, I will always attribute them as seafarers first. They were mariners.
Or if they just had a record of it that had been done long before them that they inherited, perhaps. They
could have been like a descendant of knowledge,
that would explain why you see similar phenomena around other parts of the world.
Sure. Well, American Newgrange was on the History Channel 2 program when I had Scott Walter on. I talked to him about that, and that piqued my interest, obviously, because of my own interest in Newgrange. And they reckon that one could be going back to 2000 BC. So, which is, if that's extremely important and not being addressed.
Well, the other thing is Monteverde in Chile is, I think, 16 or 18,000 years old, and that's well before Clovis. And and it's all the way that far south. I mean, how do you go through 100 different ecosystems north and south of the equator and just migrating? You wouldn't do that. Obviously, they're skirting the coast.
Sure.
There's a documentary of the Inuit, how they went and just up and migrated from the coast of Siberia over to Greenland. Around 1,000 years ago. And, the Greenland Norse, when they went out to Greenland, there wasn't anybody there. The Inuit came in, I think, around the year 1100 or 1200, or maybe 1200, something like that. The Norse had been out there for 200 or 300 years.
Sure. So I kind of, I know we talk about that 5000 BC wave, that's in terms of the megaliths, but I think around the planet you have this 10,000 BC problem as well. And I look at the work of Hancock and the Yonaguni Monument. I don't know what you think of the Yonaguni Monument, Miles.
I think it's natural.
You do? What about the stone circle that was in Kermie?
I've seen stone circles in creeks in Virginia.
Really?
Unfortunately, gentlemen,
you get a rock stuck in a whirlpool.
Unfortunately, Miles, I'm going to have to focus your time on the great Gregorian number catcher because you've only got 1 minute left. Well, about 45 seconds. So I thought you might like me to just hop in so you could say goodbye.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Yeah, Miles, it's been a pleasure talking to you too, and you too, Bob. And thanks for all the listeners as well. Yeah, it's been great to get some feedback as well.
Yeah, well, getting feedback through you now, James. I don't know what you just did there. Thank you. No worries, man. If any of the listeners do want to actually look at the website, it is fully up to date now. If you just click on the Dark City Special Show, you'll be able to get all James's info directly from there. Thanks to our jabber. That was the Dark City Show, folks. Please stay tuned.
And now, broadcasting from multiple ground stations across the planet, this is Dark City Radio.